So welcome everybody to How to Develop Creative Confidence Session 1. So today is pretty exciting for a couple of reasons. One, I got a coffee, and two, it's Friday, and three, I'm joined by good friends Brendan and Leanne O'Sullivan, who together co-founded Big Blue Digital, originally named BozWeb. So first up, you're a digital marketing agency, Brendan. So from when you started to today, what's been the journey?
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, 15 years.
15 years. Nice.
Yeah, no, it's been a big one. So, no, the change in the online space. So, everything from how do you turn a computer on, which is pretty much where we were back in 2000, through to the Internet of Things. So, no, look, I was talking to someone last night, and I was actually having a blab with some guys, and they were talking about what it is to be a farmer. So tweeting in agribusiness for farmers, and years ago, farmers wouldn't even know what Twitter was. And even now they still struggle to a degree. So it is a bit of a difficulty for them. But to see the take up of the movement for the farming industry from where they were back in 2000 to today has been nothing short of astounding. And that's what I use as my ruler. So sure, white collar workers, professional services, and everything else under the sun seems to just evolve along. But farming has the difficulty of being outside the office, poor internet connection, everything. So they're a great litmus test.
Yeah, and I think the integration of technology outside what I would call default technology environments is really a sign of the times. And I think the idea of technology confidence and creative confidence kind of intersect to a degree. Would you say that's the case in your clients?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think creative was anywhere near as important back then as what it is now. So your topic is, I'm really interested to know what you're about to speak about, because I suspect it's about what I've seen, albeit that we're not involved in the creative as much as you. So I'm really looking forward to this blab.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's going to be kind of interactive as well. So, I mean, I want to hear from Leanne, who is just coming online, and from yourself. And so I guess first up, let's do the definition. So creative obviously denotes everything that's creative assets, ideas of the mind, or manifestations of the soul, if you want to put it in that term. So it's the idea of an expression of an idea, and that's what I'm obsessed about. Like when I started my business in 2004, so I've been doing this 10 years. I'm only a young chap compared to others. So the premise for me...
You shouldn't be so mean to Brendan. You shouldn't be so mean to Brendan.
No, he looks younger every day. It's down to when I walk in.
Yeah. If you're referring to the loss of hair and going back to be like, then I look younger.
Exactly. That's right. And so this idea of empower your ideas. So that's been the premise from day one from me with Thrive Media, is how do we empower, as in put legs on your ideas? So like, to me, if you want to break down that slogan, empower your ideas, empower, you've got enabling, then is like your intrinsic ownership of an idea, and then idea is that expression or that concept. And so today I want to talk with you and to people who have just joined us as well, not necessarily about creative ideas. That's not the idea. Today is more about the first word, which is the empower. So how do we get started? There's nothing scarier, even 10 years on, than looking at a blank canvas in Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop or InDesign or Final Cut or Premiere, whatever people are using for creative, or even a blank Word document. It is terrifying.
Yeah.
So, Leanne, with your recent history as a blogger, you opened up a blank form. It's all white. There's no type. All you've done is chosen a font. Do you find that an exciting yet terrifying place?
Yes, I still do. And I think I've only just now understood your whiteboard in terms of what I've been looking at all week, thinking about what we're going to talk about today. And it's very much, for me, that it's like you need confidence to start things, but sometimes I think for me that creative spark is about you've got to let go. You've got to not think, will it succeed, won't it succeed? You've got to stop with all of that, what's happening down there, and you've just got to dive in. So it's like standing on the edge of the pool and it's a hot day and you know it's going to be great in the water, but you've got to like jump off. Stop thinking about everything else and just do that first little thing. I was reading last night. I've been struggling to finish Gretchen Rubin's, her happiness book. And last night I just opened up at the page I was at and this thing just jumped out at me, and it's so perfect for what we're talking about now, which was this quote from Voltaire, which was, "Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good." Yeah. And I think sometimes with creative people, sometimes with blogging people, sometimes with small business owners, anybody that has that, as you say, that idea, that initial thought, what I think and what I found for myself before I started blogging was that you get so caught up with the idea of, oh, but I want it to be perfect, I want it to be amazing, that you don't start. You really prevent yourself from just starting. Yeah. And that is what I just thought, that is it, that don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. That Voltaire guy, amazing.
Absolutely. And the idea of starting, right? Like I gave the analogy of a blank canvas. And sometimes when we want to start something, we start it because we want people to know we're starting something, or because we're supposed to, or in our context, you're paid to start. And then there's the fact of, okay, now that I've been commissioned by the client or I've had to work towards this deadline, now how do I start my expression of that idea? And this is something here which I'll read to you, which probably over the last, say, 12 months has struck a chord with me. And it's just from a book I've been reading. And it says this, it says, "I won't try to be all things to all people, but rather this is exactly what I do, and this is my unique take on things." So it's kind of saying, however long you've been in your industry or your job or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a creative industry. I just want to stress that for today's conversation, is that you have a unique take on things, and that you're not supposed to be all things to all men, but what you are required to do is to find that idea, that expression, and say, you know what, this is my ideas and this is my unique take on that idea. So, Leanne, you don't have to reinvent the wheel to get started. Would you agree?
Exactly. You don't. You don't. You don't need to do anything other than that very first thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brendan, for you, like when we're talking about vision and, thinking laterally about work things, and you're a bit of an Imagineer. I like that word because it's kind of like a visionary person, but using the imagination for looking at greenfield sites and going, I can see what could be. So for you, what do you think is the enemy of people who are trying to think about what they could do with their business or their family or their organization? Because it's not just creative only. What do you think are some of the barriers that people have for imagining?
Yeah, look, that is a very good question. The only thing I'd like to just throw up first and foremost is I agree with Leanne. The whole starting part is the hardest. So even when I was having a conversation, you were talking about starting a blog or whatever, I've said to a client, like, if you ever want to even just start a blog, just go into the system that you use and just do the heading. And then
absolutely.
Just go. Then come back a week later and then do the first paragraph and then go. And then come back a week later and do the second. So luckily we have a bit of a timeline of when our blogs go out. So we have that window of time that lets us to do that. In answer to your Imagineering question, that's a good one. How have I done this? I guess, basically I can't tell someone to free their mind. They've got to do it themselves. Some people inherently find that difficult to do because it's just not in their nature. However, to plan it out, I must admit, I do start with a piece of paper and I just draw it down, or I start with a document. These days, I'm sort of a little bit lazy. I don't do the bit of paper anymore, and I start with a document. And then what happens is I find that I just add in bits and pieces over time. And I'm currently going through one at the moment, a business blueprint, so that, you know, if I ever pop my clothes, got hit by a bus or whatever, I could hand over this document to someone and say, and this is what I'm thinking, and this is what the business is, and this is where I want to go to. So if someone had to step up and take over, they'd say, oh, okay, I can see where he was going with all of this. So this document that I've prepared helps me understand the direction that I want to go. Business consultant aside, and one-page mind maps and all that sort of stuff, which are a good start as well if you're into mind maps. But mine starts with, it sounds boring, I know, but like a Word document where I put headings to sections, and then I start to fill each of those out.
I'm just relieved you didn't say Microsoft Publisher. Otherwise, I would have ended this blab right now.
Yeah. What I try to do, I definitely don't try to be limited by some software that helps me capture my creative. It's like, forget that. That's why I go with a blank document, whether it's, you know, I'm not promoting Microsoft Word, but, you know, I use Google Docs. So I just dump it in there and it's a start. And then you just flesh that out over time. The document I'm working on now, I've literally been working on for about 4 or 5 months. It's like writing a book. I actually have an appreciation of how novel writers, the pain they have to go through, and they complain. It took me 3 or 4 years, but it got there.
And we've had a really good question from Kyle in the comment section in relation to something that we've said, and that would be, I guess, set out for your question you just previously answered. Is this like, what if we've already failed at something and that's kind of created a setback for us? So let's just be upfront. I'm really good at failing.
Yeah, me too. Don't worry. And I think the best business people in the world have failed.
Yeah. Terribly. And I think the rule for me is fall down 7 times, get up 8. So it's kind of like if you fail, then that either means like something went wrong that was either external and it wasn't within your skill set or ability to control, or B, it was an internal issue. So that means that, hey, maybe with some self-reflection, I can go and make that into a lesson rather than just a failure. But I'll just share with you something here too, Kyle, that I've got. If Gmail will get out of the way, here we go. Okay, so it's if it's important to you, you'll find a way. If it's not, you'll find an excuse. And I think that people, rather than looking at something and finding a way, they find an excuse. And I think it's because that thing is not important enough to find a way. So there is a cliche. Sorry, Leanne, go for it.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that the other side of that is, and I think you two are probably more entrepreneurial in your approach about things. And so I think all entrepreneurs have failed. They all have, before they've hit the big time. You know, it's years and years to become an overnight success. That is so true. But I think for some of us who aren't naturally wired like that entrepreneur thing, you know, we want to succeed. We're very driven and we want to make sure we do it right. I think the biggest thing for us to understand, and this was my epiphany in the last, 18 months, 2 years of understanding how I'm wired and why I do what I do, and also thinking about how I respond to failure, is I tend to think that all the good people that I see, this has been me in the past, all the good people, all the successful businesses, I just kind of assume that they've always been a success. It was a really foreign concept for me to accept the fact that they did fail, that you saw just that, but I failed to appreciate all of those things that they did to get to that point. And I think one of the things to understand about taking that start, like taking that leap to implement that idea, is that failure is part and parcel of success, and that everybody does. And I think if more people shared that story of their failures with others, and even if they don't turn into something, but if they share that story of failures, I think that they're learning something, that they're still, you can turn it around and you can see and you can accept what's actually happened and you can move. And I think that's the other thing, is that people are so frightened to start that they don't move at all. And I think that's kind of worse in a lot of respects, particularly in business, that what's worse than failing is to not do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like in the subtext of creative confidence, that in my context, which is different to say like a farmer or an insurance broker or whatever it is that you might find yourself doing as a career, is that I say to a client, okay, we're going to give you 3 art directions for a brand that you started for your new business. So then I sit down and then, or some of my contractors, whatever, and we say, okay, let's put together 3 different, distinctly different ideas. We know that 2/3 of those are going to be considered a fail by the client. So it's kind of like, so let's maybe work towards, you've got to prepare your heart to go, okay, there's going to be elements of these ideas expression that the client won't like, but it's not because they don't like it. It's because it doesn't meet the brief. So it's not because they find it not good enough. So it's not a question about your design worth. It's, does it meet the design criteria? And I think, Leanne, what you were saying with people starting, people are afraid of being told what they're doing is wrong or, you know, not good enough. But we need to keep in mind that idea of, are they assessing my self-worth, or are they assessing my business or creative worth? So
and it's often not even the worth part, is it? It's taking that that emotion out of it, which probably, if you're in the creative space, is really hard to do. In the same way that if you're a control freak like me, taking out the, you know, success and being perfect, that's a hard thing. But you do have to at least appreciate that it's not about your self-worth, and it's not even about, you know, your skill. Skill's not the right word, but you know what I'm getting at. It was exactly what you were talking about. It doesn't quite fit the brief. So let's just be analytical about what's going on here in terms of the creative space. And yes, it's probably as hard for a creative to be analytical as it is for me, control freak, to let it go. But if you bring that awareness in, you are so better able, I think, and so better equipped to like move forward, because you're at least aware, where in the past maybe you've like not been.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we all agree, and the guys who are commenting, there's some really great comments there. So we agree that perfection is the enemy of good, and it's also the enemy of starting, or the impetus to get going. So allow me to give you this acronym. It's ACT, A-C-T, and the A is for action, and the C is changes, and the T is things. So action changes things. So you've got this request or this design or whatever it is that you have to do. Again, this is not creative conversation only. It's for whatever industry you have to create and do things. Is that if I act, I can change something. In that, it can be that blank Word document, Brendan. Whatever you do is going to change the state of that blank document. So be encouraged that listeners, like any action is better than no action is what I would offer. So I'm interested to get your ideas on this. So this is something that I go through with the creative confidence process. Is like, yep, I can do this. I reckon I can have a go at this thing. And the first thing is contextual thinking. So contextual thinking for me is like in any industry or conversations with friends or family, you have essentially a problem, right? Or you have to fill a need. And then you, on the other hand, are supposed to fulfill that need or give an answer. And so I think, okay, so we've got a client in front of me and they're saying all these different things. They're saying all these packets of information. And then contextually, I go, how can I piece together these bits of information, draw them together in context, and create one straightforward idea? So contextual thinking. This is how do I assimilate random or disparate bits of information and draw them together into a cohesive thought. So, Brendan, how do you gather those random or dispersive ideas, draw them together into one contextual idea?
Yeah.
It's a big loaded question.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a loaded question. especially now more than ever when, you know, as you said, we used to be Boss Web Systems, and it was a lot easier when it was just a website. But now there's a whole online marketing strategy that has to occur. And Leanne and I have been having conversations about this week because we've had a number of meetings with clients, both existing and new, and to get them to understand contextually how we're going to get to an endpoint. There's a couple of different ways that we've done that. So to be honest, what I do now, and even last night I was emailing someone saying, look, you know what? He's saying, yeah, come and sort of see us and we'll talk about whatever. And I'm saying, yep. And I'm going to, and he wanted me to say what we did. And I'm going, no. What's going to happen is I'm going to sit there quietly and listen to you guys all talk, share your goals and objectives. We want to understand where you want to end up. So I think that's what we've really figured out within Big Blue Digital in the last 12 months, 24 months, is that really what we need to be clear on is the end goal for the client. And that is the easiest thing. And then I work my way back from there. So what actually tends to happen is what happens is you get all the fragments and all the bits and pieces and all the story, and you then funnel it down into, well, is it meeting the goals and objectives? So I spoke to a potential client the other day, and I said, okay, what's your mission statement? What's your vision? Where are you looking to go? And they said, well,
I don't know.
No, he knew exactly what it was.
Oh, that's good.
It was to grow as fast as we can. Get as big as we possibly can, as fast as we possibly can. And I went, right.
That's big.
The big one. Yeah. So to work back from that, and he was then struggling through the conversation, saying, well, what are you actually going to do? And I said, well, how big are you going to get? He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, we're going to try and figure out how big you're going to get, and then we can help assist you with a number of different paths that we're going to have to go down to get to that goal. We actually have a digital discovery process inside the business where it's sort of based loosely on a business model canvas, but it's a digital and marketing canvas. So that we've sort of moved that on into, we sort of had to have a form, and we give that to a client and they sort of fill in some little bits and pieces, but it just stimulates their thinking.
So this is where you're gathering the disparate bits of information and drawing them together to create one cohesive picture.
Yeah, we're nearly getting them on the drug because we're just giving a little form, fill in a couple of fields, and they go, oh, that's it. That's all we're going to do. And all that does is gives us, that's the first step. That's the first insight that we have. And then we can potentially go into, and we just did this with a client recently in the office, 2.5 days planning. And he was like, but what do I get out of it? It's like, well, we now understand what you want to do. And he was like, wow, I thought I'd be walking away having all this stuff in place. And it's like, no.
First things first.
We'll get to the end point, but we need to be clear on where you want to go, and then we'll help you get there. We don't just go, oh, we're going to do this thing, and then we're going to do that thing, and it's going to magically work because the world is so...
It doesn't magically work.
It doesn't work at all. So, the world is a very complex, sophisticated place that we are bombarded with, I don't know how many bits of information per day. But I know back in the day, it was like advertising. It was like 3,000 ads a day you're exposed to. That was like 10 years ago. I don't know what it is now, but if you're bombarded with information, trying to make sense of that. So we try to gently bring the client down and calm them down. Say, okay, let's figure out where you're going, and let's not overburden you. We'll figure it out, and then we'll tell you what we're going to do, and then we'll get there. So
yeah, okay, great.
I wish I could say, oh, we just do this, but no.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm hearing anyway, and this is useful also, again, across all different industries, is that you have to somehow create a system to gather those disparate pieces of information pockets. Because unless you can draw them together, then you can't make a decision. And I think, Leanne, this is where overwhelm kicks in. So this is where, so contextual thinking, people go, okay, I've got this blank canvas, I've got this opportunity. There's all these ideas out there, or all these bits of information. I'm overwhelmed because I can't do what the next part I want to talk about, which is curate. I can't curate these packets of information into a narrative or into an order so I can get going. So, Leanne, so in terms of even with just say it's like a family situation. This is not going into Big Blue Digital or into anything private into your household, but just say you have interpersonal issues with friends or family. So how do we use this creative confidence and go, how do I put together all these bits of information and then somehow make a decision on what order to put them in? Like, if it's a relational issue, somebody might have something really crazy going on, but you only found out after you blew them up in the car park, like how is the order of ideas important? Or is it a tricky question?
It is a tricky question.
Because it's the order that we put things in that can help overwhelm disappear.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about two simple things, I think, that I used to apply both in work and also say with when my kids were little, because I think that kind of approach for when your kids are little actually often plays a big role in sometimes how I work with, say, small business operators to cut through that overwhelm.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think works well when you've got little kids and a grown-up is that someone is the role of the grown-up and the little kids are the people with all of the information. And they're the overwhelmed because they're being bombarded with lots of pieces of information. But somebody is above them and they cut through and get rid of, if you like, the crap.
Curate.
Yes. So what you do is you then, with your experience, because you've listened to others, because you've learnt yourself, you let them speak, but then because you already are aware of things, you cut through the ones you know is rubbish and you present them with a couple of alternatives. So you do need to take on board, and I do this a lot with clients, you need to take on board and let them talk and you need to listen. But what you need to do is understand that lots of the things that overwhelm clients, this is what I see, lots of things that overwhelm clients are very similar. Their industries are different, but the things that overwhelm them are the same. And
exactly.
I personally like to approach things like I'm the mother. And
they're parenting clients.
Well, yes, it's not about being derogatory or demeaning or anything like that, because I'm not like that with my kids. But I do think that that's what they come to you and that's what they expect, that you can cut through the overwhelm and you can, as you say, curate the list and put them in orders and present them with alternatives that are best suited to their personality, their makeup, their budget. But I do think that you've got to compact it down. You've got to present them with a limited number of options that based on listening to them, based on the industry, based on budget, based on time, all those things, and then you just present them with a little list. Otherwise, you don't get anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think... Sorry, Leanne, go.
No. I was just saying that's what I tend to do. I tend to like in those situations to be a little bit directive when you're at that point. And then, you reduce those options down and you present the options with an argument, and then they can make a clear decision because they maybe only have two things that they're thinking about, or maybe three. I try not to have more than that. I think that's too many. And I do think that if you've done the groundwork and the investigation and the listening well, and that's in any situation, then you sort of do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm hearing is like you have to find that mid ground of being didactic enough to say, I can help you, but also sideways enough to go, I'm also coming alongside you. And I think when it comes to ideas, metaphysically, it's like that with our ideas. We need to say to our ideas, okay, you're all disparate bits of information. Let me gather you. And then part two, like we were saying, is, that curate. And part three is narrative. So like, let's put these ideas into an order. So, so I think in family life and then in work life and recreational, there's always this idea of order. First things first, and keeping the main thing. So clear belief or your idea or your design brief or whatever it is, for me, is what helps me curate. So I've got a good question from Big Blue Digital, which is Brendan, saying, how on earth do you curate content by overwhelmed clients. And for my 2 cents worth is that you come back to your clear belief. So you come back to your conviction. What can I offer the world or your client or family that will leave my fingerprint on their idea, yet deliver them the solution? So it's that clear belief. So when you think about the idea of narrative, it's like, how can I reduce stress to start the process? So E-Myth Mastery book says that if you have more than 3 things on your desk, then you're in a state of overwhelm.
Yes.
which for me is just like, maybe that applies to the rest of the world and not for me, because my desk is actually pretty clean.
That's why you have a big cupboard behind you, because outside of mind.
Yeah. But admittedly, my desk is actually pretty simple. But yeah, that's right. But yeah, so it's the idea of narrative. First things first, and the clear belief of what is it that I'm trying to do, in my job or in my creative context. So the biggest thing for me is to find that balance, Leanne, like you were saying, of teaching or writing. So for me, I call that a fingerprint. So I want to leave my fingerprints on my clients' services or products, but I want them to feel like they made it, but using my hands.
Yeah. I understand that.
Yeah. So I think, just before we kind of wrap up, I just wanted to maybe just ask you one last question, and that's the idea of how do I make my idea novel? And this is an interesting thing because, like you were saying, Brendan, we're in a world where constantly we're bombarded with information or bombarded with ads and marketing and so forth. So how do we make our idea, or how do we confidently create something that is novel? And this is really hard because it's kind of like when a songwriter sits down with a guitar, they say to themselves, well, isn't every melody already done? Or
yes, I was just thinking that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's maybe there's an element of truth in that, but it's how can I make my delivery of the idea novel? How can I create a setting for me to go, I can be confident with my ideas because I know that it's novel. I know that it's different. Doesn't mean it's unique, because that means that you think no one else has thought of it, but novel in that I'm doing it in an interesting way. So, Brendan, how would you encourage people who are watching to think about how they can make their idea novel without them feeling the pressure of it having to be unique like nothing else in the world? Because they're 2 different things.
Yeah, so they are. There's a number of different ways I do this, and Kyle, I'm reading your comments there as well, and right, Van's logo. Yeah, we haven't run out of music yet, that's for sure. Okay, so what do we do? So we've done a couple of different things. I guess I am not a big fan of my own personal brand. You and I have spoken about this, and there are a lot of reasons why that's the case.
I don't agree with you, though.
Yeah, I know. And you and I have had that conversation as well. Personal brand, yeah, look, for me, it's just not something that I am into. But having said that, to be novel to a new client or even to an existing client, look, I got to tell you that the one thing I do, there's a couple of things that we've done. But the first thing that I do is, first and foremost, and Kyle, this is for you, I'm just me. I'm just me with all my flaws and everything that I do wrong and the dumb things that I say. And I do that a lot, trust me. Okay, I just go, look, I'm human. I'm not some superhuman. I don't know all the answers, but, I can go and find them and, we'll figure it out. So that tends to be something that gets me across the line with some, not all people, because some people, they want to be wowed. They want to go, I want to see the big, shiny, bright, amazing thing that is super fantastic, and you're not it because you're flawed, so I'm not into you. That is that much. So I don't worry about that too much, and I do lose those ones, and so be it. That's the way it goes. Transparency, I think, is look, everyone keeps banging on about it. No, you got to be transparent, and I could not agree more. But real transparency, not pseudo transparency, not fake transparency, which I see a lot of big business trying to do, and you go, yeah, you guys are just trying to kid us again.
Instagram transparency.
Yeah, blab
We're-
transparency.
Yeah.
So here we are.
No,
Like,
No,
no
I'm
filter.
joking.
There's
No,
no filter. Leanne's
I'm
being
joking.
satirical.
Yes, I
She's
am.
saying that, like, yeah, there's this perfect veneer or filter on everything we do.
Yeah.
Blab
yeah.
shows up your ugly flaws, yes.
I have got to say,
Oh,
one of the
thanks.
reasons
No, as in, I'm looking at my screen, Leanne. Yours is that a filter on yours, Leanne? You're looking really good today.
she's got a lot. She's got a lot going on. But anyway, whatever. Okay, I'm not going to answer this. You're having way too much fun. All right. So my point is that, yeah, being honest and transparent with our clients and actually exposing information to them and all the dealings that we have and the work that we do for them and the value that we prove to them. Like, if I try to do nothing else, I try to prove the value of what we do to our clients because they're spending money with us. I've got to give it back to them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
From a novelty perspective, look, everyone loves Apple and Apple's so amazing, but they do terrible things and they make the most massive profits ever. You would never know it.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
do really great branding and that's all really fantastic. So from a novel, so that's on my personal side, that's what I sort of do. On the business side though, I show off that we have an amazing team.
Yeah.
I have cams in the office, high definition video, 24/7. This is us in our environment. We know our stuff. So Brendan, it's a bit folksy, as Leanne always tells me, but be that as it may, we're very switched on.
Hayseed, actually,
Hayseed,
is the term
yeah,
that I use.
well, that's just charming, isn't it? Go to our website and you'll see that we're really not that. We're just down to earth people and we're transparent, but we definitely know our stuff.
Yeah,
And we're not sharp salesmen trying to rip you off, which there are plenty of them out there.
Mhm.
And I guess that's a point of difference that we've had. Look, the upside or the downside of it is we don't make our billions of dollars. We're not that sort of business.
Yep.
But when we talk to our clients and they go, yeah, you know what? You're actually here to make me a better business. You, Brendan, are actually trying to grow my business because that seems to be your passion. And you and I were talking last night about my hobbies. As lame as it sounds, my hobbies is researching a better way, always trying to find a better way of doing things. And if I can pass it on to a client, I do get some personal gratification out of that, I've got to say.
Yeah, that's good.
It sounds weird, but that's my hobby.
That's good. And I think, so this idea of novel versus unique, the main reason I wanted to share this, Leanne, is that I feel like there's a lot of people who have this pressure of if I'm delivering something that's not unique, as in not something that no one's thought of, I failed. Well, really, it's about leaving the novel sense of, like I put in the comment section, I operate my life with this idea of do common things in an uncommon way. So that for me allows me to exhale and go, you know what? I can be confident with my creative ideas for life, business, and home, knowing that all I have to do is do common things in an uncommon way. I don't have to be mind-blowing unique and people go, wow, I've never seen that. It's just common things in an uncommon way. So it leaves my fingerprints on it. So for you, Leanne, when it comes to your blogging or whatever it is that you're working on in the business.
None of that's unique.
Yeah, exactly.
None of it's unique. None of it's unique. And I think, it's a real eye-opener to realise if you research and you look and you watch and you learn from other people, gives you a lot of understanding that, you really shouldn't get so hung up on this whole perfect, it's got to be unique. You should just be focused on, lots of people do what I do. Who cares? They do. But you can always see, but the way I do it is my way of doing it.
Exactly.
And that's it. And I think the more you start to look up and out around you and appreciate the fact that there's lots of people who do what we do. When I started blogging the way that I blogged at the start of the year, I honest to God thought that not many people did that. That's how head in the sand I'd been. And then when I started to do that and I actively went looking for people, I'm a bit of a learner and I like to learn new stuff all the time. And I found all these other people doing stuff and they were doing an amazing thing. And instead of me thinking, oh, my God, I'm not going to do this because all these other people already are, it actually, in a lot of ways, made me appreciate the way that I did it, because I thought, well, look at these other people, they're doing it and I can do this. And I'm, in a lot of ways, you kind of, because you get past that, it needs to be unique, you can actually then focus on, I'm going to do it my way. And my way is an okay way. My way is a good way.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, you just, it's just about, you know, that whole thing. You've got to let go of perfect and focus that I'm going to do what I do to the best that I can do it. And that is enough, whatever that is.
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point there. It's like the intimidation factor. I know that when, like, this is ancient history now, but going back in 2007 and 8, when our band went to record in this beautiful studio on the coast, which, like, everyone from, like, you know, In Excess, Guy Sebastian, Kylie Minogue, everyone recorded in, and we were staying there. And on the wall there was a guitar signed by all the members of U2. So it's just like, this is an incredible place, and just over me there's this sense of intimidation. But then I'm just like, and I had to tell my soul, let's change that intimidation into inspiration, and go, wow, there's already these people, like you said, Leanne, who are bloggers who are doing this. But I want to give myself the confidence by reducing the pressure and saying, I'm going to be inspired by my competition, not pressured into thinking I'm intimidating myself out of it. And
That's
I think
right.
that's where good ideas end up dying. Would you agree, Brent?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it, to be inspired by your competition but not intimidated by your competition. Of course we can look and we can learn and we can do all sorts of things, but you could just be who you are.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good start on session 1 of Creative Confidence. And Brendan, is there anything that you wanted to quickly round off with or ask that you think we haven't covered? Because we've covered cohesive ideas, curation, and then the idea of narrative and putting it in order.
You know what? I'm going to say we've done enough. I'm looking forward to part 2.
Yeah, awesome.
I know this is part 1, or session 1, so I'm looking forward to session 2.
Yeah, cool. So other guys who are commenting and watching, next Friday, same time, 10 o'clock, is session 2. And we're talking more about, it is the touch my heart element of ideas. And that's like, how on earth do you sell something or pitch an idea in business, mechanic or an artist? How do we engage people and touch their heart with it, as well as other things as well? So thanks for joining. If you've got any questions, whack them in the comment section, and we'll see you on the next Blab. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, guys.
See you,
Thanks,
Brendan.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.